20 years had passed since the crash on KETH-4. Ambassador Bora stood at the window of her office on the Galactic diplomatic station, looking out at the stars. She was 27 years old now, with the same bright eyes and warm smile she had as a child. Her dark hair was shorter, more professional. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. But inside, she was still the same girl who had walked up to a dragon and asked to be friends. Her office was decorated with memories. The crystals Vortex had given her sat on a shelf, still glowing softly. The smooth stones lined her desk, and on the wall hung a single image, framed in silver. A little girl in a too-big environment suit, arms wrapped around the snout of the largest dragon in the galaxy. A soft chime announced a visitor. Bora turned from the window and smiled. "Come in." The door opened, and Ambassador Trellick entered. He was older now too, his blue skin showing the lines of age, his tentacles moving more slowly than they once did. But his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Ambassador Bora," he greeted her formally. "The council meeting begins in 1 hour. Are you prepared?" "I am always prepared when it concerns Vortex," she replied. "What is the agenda?" "The Mantid Collective wishes to establish a trade route through Sector 7 Omega. They claim it would save them 3 days of travel time. But they are afraid of the dragon." Bora laughed softly. Everyone is always afraid of the dragon, until they meet him. She picked up a datapad from her desk and walked toward the door. Trellick fell into step beside her, just as he had so many times over the years. They had become good friends, the human ambassador and the Valorian diplomat. Their partnership had changed the galaxy in ways neither of them could have imagined 20 years ago. "I remember when I first met him," Trellick said as they walked through the station's corridors. "I was so afraid I could barely speak. And you, this tiny human child, holding my tentacle and telling me not to worry." "You were shaking so badly," Bora remembered, smiling. "I thought you might fall over." "I nearly did." But then Vortex lowered his head and looked at me with those eyes, those ancient burning eyes. And I understood. He was not a monster. He was just alone, so terribly alone. 3,000 years, Bora said quietly. 3,000 years with no one to care about him. Everyone who came saw a threat to be destroyed or avoided. Nobody saw a living being with feelings and thoughts and loneliness. They reached the council chamber and paused outside the great doors. Bora took a deep breath, preparing herself for the debates ahead. These meetings were always challenging. Many species still feared Vortex, still remembered the stories of destruction from long ago. Changing minds was slow work, but she had done it before. She would do it again. "Before we go in," Trellick said, "I wanted to ask you something. Something I have wondered about for 20 years. Ask, that first day when you walked outside the ship toward the dragon, when everyone was screaming for you to come back. You were 7 years old. How were you not afraid?" Bora was quiet for a moment, thinking. She had been asked this question many times by many people. Scientists wanted to study her. Psychologists wanted to understand her. Journalists wanted to tell her story. But the answer was always the same. "I was afraid," she admitted. "My heart was beating so fast. My hands were shaking inside my suit. But I looked at Vortex, really looked at him, and I saw something more important than my fear. I saw how he watched us, how he circled our ship but never attacked, how he brought us minerals and kept us warm. He was not behaving like a monster. He was behaving like a guardian who did not know how to introduce himself." She smiled at the memory. "And I thought, if no one says hello first, how will he ever know that we want to be friends? Someone had to be brave enough to try. So I decided it would be me." Trellick nodded slowly. "Humans are remarkable creatures. You see possibilities where other species see only danger. Maybe, Or maybe we are just too stubborn to give up on anyone. They entered the council chamber together. Representatives from 100 worlds filled the curved seats, and all eyes turned to watch the human ambassador take her place. Bora had earned respect across the galaxy, not through war or power, but through something rarer, the ability to see good where others saw only evil. The meeting lasted for hours. There were arguments about trade routes and safety protocols and historical fears. But in the end, as it often did, the decision came down to Bora. Vorthax is not an obstacle, she told the council. He is an ally. For 20 years, he has protected Earth's colonial routes. He has never harmed a single ship that passed through his territory in peace. The Mantic Collective can establish their trade routes safely, as long as they understand one simple rule. Treat him with respect, and he will treat them with protection. And if they fail to show respect, asked the Mantid representative, his many eyes blinking nervously. Bora smiled, but there was steel in her voice. Then they will answer to me. And trust me, you do not want that. The council voted in favor of the trade route. Another victory. Another step toward the future Bora had been building since she was 7 years old. After the meeting, she took a shuttle to Kethfor. It was a journey she made often, sometimes for diplomatic reasons, sometimes just because she missed her friend. The moon was different now. What had once been a forbidden zone was now a busy hub of activity. Ships came and went, delivering supplies and carrying visitors. A small station had been built in orbit, and researchers from dozens of species studied the dragon with wonder and respect. But Vorthax still lived in his original territory, still curled around the spot where the dandelion seed had crashed so many years ago. The old ship was long gone, salvaged for parts and memories. But the dragon remained. Bora's shuttle landed on the familiar rocky ground. She stepped out without an environment suit. The station's engineers had built a small dome of breathable air around this area, just for her. A gift from the dragon, they said. He had made it clear that this human should always be comfortable when she visited. Vorthax raised his head as she approached. He was just as huge as she remembered, just as beautiful. His scales still shimmered like liquid starlight. His eyes still burned with ancient fire. But when he looked at her, that fire was warm, gentle, loving. "Hello, old friend," Bora said, walking up to his snout just as she had done thousands of times before. "I missed you." The dragon made that sound she knew so well, that deep humming of contentment. He lowered his head to her level, and Bora wrapped her arms around his snout in a hug. "I have so much to tell you," she said, sitting down on the ground beside him. "The Mantic Collective is going to start trading through your sector. I made sure they understood the rules. And Earth just finished building a new colony on the 4th planet of the Kira system. Mom sends her love. She's retired now. Did I tell you? She says she is too old for space travel, but I think she is just tired of me always being the center of attention." Vorthax listened to every word, his great eyes following her expressions, his tail curling with pleasure at the sound of her voice. He understood her. He always had. "Some people still ask me how I did it," Bora continued. "How I made friends with the deadliest dragon in the galaxy. They want to know the secret. But there is no secret. There never was." She leaned against his warm scales and looked up at the stars. "I just saw someone who needed a friend, and I decided to be that friend. That is all. That is everything." The dragon hummed and the sound vibrated through her body like a song. Above them, ships passed through the sector that had once been forbidden, traveling in safety under the protection of the last star dragon. Children on those ships pressed their faces against windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary creature. And somewhere on the surface of Kethfor, a woman who had once been a brave little girl sat with her oldest friend and watched the universe go by. Some things Bora had learned were more powerful than fear, more lasting than hatred, more important than all the weapons and shields in the galaxy. Some things, like love and friendship and the courage to say hello, could change everything. And humans, with all their strange and wonderful hearts, had never been particularly good at giving up on anyone, not even dragons, not ever. The news spread to every corner of the known universe. On 1,000 different worlds and 1,000,000 different languages, beings talked about the same thing: the human child and the dragon. On the Valorian homeworld, Ambassador Trellick stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from hundreds of species. Some had bodies like clouds of gas. Some were made of living crystal. Some looked like insects or plants, or things that had no comparison to anything on Earth. But all of them were watching the same footage on the main display. Little Bora, sitting on Vorthax's head, her legs dangling down as the dragon carried her gently across his territory. "This changes everything," the High Counselor declared. "For 3,000 years, we have believed Vorthax to be a mindless destroyer. We have built our policies around avoiding him, around containing him. Now we learn that a single human child can approach him without fear and be welcomed. The question is why," said the representative of the Mantid Collective. He was a tall creature with sharp limbs and many eyes. "Why does the dragon accept the humans when he has killed everyone else?" Trellick stepped forward. He had been thinking about this question for days, watching every piece of footage his drones captured. He believed he understood now. "The humans came in peace," he explained. "They did not arrive with weapons. They did not try to attack or capture the dragon. They simply crashed on his moon, helpless and lost. And then, instead of running in fear, a child walked up to him and offered friendship." "But we have sent peaceful delegations before," another representative argued. "We have tried to communicate with the dragon. He destroyed every attempt." "Your peaceful delegations came in armored ships," Trellick replied. "Your communicators wore protective suits designed to resist his flames. You approached him with caution and suspicion. The humans approached him with open hearts and no defenses. The child did not even consider the possibility that he might hurt her. She simply saw a lonely creature and wanted to be his friend." The council fell silent. The idea was strange to many of them. In the galaxy, survival meant strength. It meant weapons and shields and the ability to fight. The concept of approaching danger with nothing but kindness was almost impossible to understand. "There is another factor," Trellick continued. "Humans are what scientists call pack bonders. They form emotional connections with everything around them. Their ancestors made companions of wolves and wildcats. They talk to their plants. They name their vehicles and tools. When a human sees another living being, their first instinct is to connect, to care, to love." The dragon had never encountered anything like that before. On Keth 4, the crew of the Dandelion Seed knew nothing about the debates happening across the galaxy. They were focused on survival, on repairs, on the strange new reality of sharing a moon with the most feared creature in existence. Engineer Jizu worked day and night on the engines. With the minerals Vorthax had provided, she was making progress. Slow progress, but progress. She estimated they might be able to achieve limited flight within 2 more weeks. "Not enough to leave the system," she reported to Captain Yuna, "but maybe enough to reach a higher orbit. Maybe enough to be seen by rescue ships, if any dare to come this close." But Yuna was not thinking about rescue at the moment. She was watching her daughter through the viewport. Mora was outside again, as she was every day now. She was decorating Vorthax's left horn with a string of emergency lights from the ship's supplies. She asked if she could make him pretty for visitors, Dohan said, standing next to the captain. "What visitors?" I asked. She said she was sure someone would come. Someone always comes when you need help, she said. Children believe in things that adults have forgotten, Una murmured. Maybe that is why the dragon loves her. She believes in the good in him when no one else ever did. Outside, Bora finished hanging the lights and clapped her hands with delight. The lights blinked in different colors, red and blue and green, making patterns against the dragon's starlight scales. You look beautiful, Bora told him. Like a festival dragon. Do you know what festivals are? On Earth, we have festivals where people dance and eat good food and celebrate. Mommy takes me to festivals every year. When we go home, maybe you can come with us. Would you like that? Vorthax made a sound. That deep humming that the crew had learned meant he was happy. His massive tail curled around the rocky ground, and his eyes half closed in contentment. Watching from the ship, Sunho shook his head in amazement. 3,000 years of loneliness, he said quietly. 3,000 years of everyone seeing him as a monster. And then a little girl shows him that he could be loved. It makes me wonder, Taiwan replied, making notes on his datapad. He had filled hundreds of pages with observations about the dragon. How many other monsters out there are just lonely creatures that no one ever tried to understand? The days passed, and the bond between Bora and Vorthax grew stronger. The dragon began bringing her gifts every morning. Strange crystals that glowed with inner light. Flowers that somehow grew in the caves beneath the moon's surface. Smooth stones that fit perfectly in her small hands. Bora treasured each gift and displayed them on a shelf near her bed. My friend gave me these, she would tell anyone who listened. He found them just for me. Haru and Nari grew braver too. They started going outside to play, running and jumping on the low-gravity surface, while Vorthax watched over them like an enormous guardian. Once, when Nari tripped and fell, the dragon's head moved with impossible speed to catch her before she hit the ground. He protected me, Nari shouted, laughing as she slid down his snout. He caught me. The twins started calling him Uncle Vorthax. The name made the adults uncomfortable at first, but slowly they began to use it too. It was hard to see him as a monster anymore. Hard to remember the fear they had felt just weeks ago, on the 10th day since the crash. The first rescue ship appeared at the edge of Sector 7-Omega. It was a Valorian diplomatic vessel, sent by Ambassador Trellick himself. It stopped at the border of the Forbidden Zone and sent a message to the crashed human ship. Human vessel Dandelion Seed. This is the Valorian diplomatic ship Herald of Peace. We have come to offer assistance. However, we are uncertain how to proceed. Is the dragon? Is Vorthax? We have seen the footage, but we must ask. Is it safe to approach? Una looked at her crew. She looked at her daughter, who had come inside to hear the message. Then she opened a communication channel. Herald of Peace. This is Captain Una. The dragon is no threat as long as you come in peace. But there is someone who should meet you first. She looked at Bora and smiled. An hour later, little Bora stood on the surface of Keth 4, wearing her too big environment suit, waiting. Beside her, Vorthax lay calmly, his great body curled around the crashed ship. The string of colorful lights still decorated his horn, blinking cheerfully in the darkness. The Valorian shuttle landed 100 meters away. Its door opened slowly, and Ambassador Trellick emerged. His tentacles were trembling, and his skin had gone pale blue with fear. But he walked forward anyway. He stopped when he was 20 meters from the dragon. His voice shook when he spoke. I am Ambassador Trellick of the Valorian people. I come in peace. I come with respect. I come to meet the human child who changed everything. Bora walked up to him, her small boots leaving footprints in the dust. She looked up at the tall alien with his strange tentacles and pale skin. Hello, she said, smiling. I am Bora. Do you want to meet my friend? Trellick looked past her at the enormous dragon. Vorthing's burning eyes watched him carefully, but there was no aggression in his gaze. Just patience and curiosity and something that might have been hope. "Yes," Trellick said, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, I would like that very much." Bora took one of his tentacles in her small hand and led him forward. "Do not be scared," she said. "He is very nice once you get to know him. He just needed someone to be nice to him first." The ambassador of the Valorian people walked toward the dragon, led by a 7-year-old human child. And across the galaxy, everyone watched in wonder. Captain Yuna stood at the open airlock, frozen in terror. Her daughter was outside, standing before the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. She wanted to run to Bora, to grab her and pull her back to safety. But her legs would not move. She knew that if she made any sudden movement, the dragon might react, might kill her daughter before she could take a single step. Behind her, the crew was gathered, watching through the viewport and the open door. Dahan had his hand on a weapon, though they all knew it would be useless. Taiwan was holding the twins back, their faces wet with tears. Jisoo and Sunho stood in shocked silence, and outside, little Bora kissed the dragon's nose. The moment stretched into eternity. Nobody breathed. Nobody blinked. The universe itself seemed to pause and watch. Vorthax's great eyes, burning with ancient fire, slowly closed. A sound came from deep within his massive chest. It was not a roar. It was not a growl. It was a hum, a vibration that traveled through the ground, through the ship, through every person watching. It was the sound of something very old and very tired finally finding a moment of peace. The dragon lowered his head to the ground, pressing his snout gently against the small child. Bora laughed, a bright and innocent sound that seemed impossible in this place of fear and death. "Your scales are warm," she said, patting his nose with her tiny hands. "And you are very pretty." Yuna finally found her voice. "Bora," she called softly, trying to keep calm. "Bora, sweetie, come back to the ship now, please." Bora turned to look at her mother. "But Mommy, he's nice. He just wanted someone to say hello. Can I stay and talk to him?" What could Yuna say? Her daughter was standing next to a creature that had destroyed entire fleets. A creature that had killed more beings than anyone could count. And that creature was currently lying on the ground, like a happy dog getting petted by a child. "Just be careful," Yuna managed to say. "Stay where I can see you." Hours passed. Bora sat down on the rocky ground next to Vorthax's head, cross-legged in her too big environment suit, and she talked. She talked about everything a 7-year-old thinks about. She told the dragon about her favorite foods, about her friends back on Earth, about the games she liked to play. She told him about her mother, the captain, about her uncle Taiwan and her cousins Haru and Nari. And Vorthax listened. The crew watched from the ship, barely believing what they were seeing. Slowly, one by one, they began to relax. The dragon showed no signs of aggression. His eyes followed Bora with something that looked almost like gentleness. "This is impossible," Dohun whispered. 3,000 years of death and destruction, and a child just walks up and makes friends with him? "Humans are strange," Jisoo said, a small smile forming on her face. "We always have been." As the hours passed, Taiwan gathered his courage. He was a biologist, a scientist. His entire life had been about studying alien creatures and understanding how they thought. He had never imagined he would have a chance to study the most feared creature in the galaxy. He put on an environment suit and walked outside. The moment he stepped through the airlock, Vorthax's eyes turned to him. A low rumble came from the dragon's throat, a warning. Taiwan froze immediately, but Bora spoke up. "It is okay, Vorthax. That is my uncle. He is very nice. He tells funny jokes." The rumble faded. Vorthax's gaze returned to the child, and Taiwan was ignored. He approached slowly, carefully, until he stood a few meters away from the dragon's massive body. "Incredible," he whispered, making notes on his datapad. "Absolutely incredible." That night, Mora finally came back inside the ship. She was tired and hungry, but her smile was bigger than it had ever been. Her mother held her so tight that Bora complained she could not breathe. "Never do that again," Una said, tears streaming down her face. "Never, never again." "But Mommy, I made a friend. His name is Vorthax, and he is very old and very lonely. Nobody ever comes to visit him because they are scared. But he is not mean. He is just sad." The adults looked at each other over Bora's head. They did not understand. They probably would never understand. But they could not argue with what they had seen. The next morning brought another surprise. When Bora went outside to visit her new friend, the twins Haru and Nari wanted to come too. "Absolutely not," Taiwan said firmly. "But Dad, Bora went, and she was fine." "Bora is—" Taiwan paused. What was Bora? Lucky? Special? Crazy? He did not know. Bora is different. But the twins would not stop asking. They begged and pleaded and promised to be careful. And finally, against his better judgment, Taiwan agreed to take them outside. The three of them walked out onto the surface of Keth 4, with Bora leading the way. Vorthax raised his head to watch them approach. The twins stayed behind their father, peeking around his legs at the enormous creature. "Vorthax, these are my cousins," Bora said cheerfully. "Haru and Nari. They are twins. That means they were born at the same time. Is that not cool?" The dragon made a soft sound, something between a grunt and a hum. His eyes examined the twins carefully. They were shaking, holding hands, but they were also curious. Children were always curious. "Hello," Haru said, his voice barely a whisper. "You are very big," Nari added. Vorthax lowered his head to their level. The flames behind his teeth were gone, hidden somewhere deep inside. He blinked slowly, and then he did something that made all of them gasp. He wagged his tail. The movement was small for a creature his size, but it still shook the ground. Rocks fell from nearby cliffs. Dust rose in clouds. And the dragon looked at the children with eyes that held no anger, no violence. Only something that looked very much like joy. "He likes you." Bora clapped her hands. "I told you he was nice." Over the following days, more of the crew ventured outside. Always carefully, always with Bora nearby to make introductions. Vorthax accepted each of them the same way, with a careful examination followed by patient tolerance. He seemed to understand that these small, soft creatures were different from the warships and armies that had come before. They were not here to fight. They were not here to conquer. They were just lost and scared and trying to survive. And so, for the first time in 3,000 years, Vorthax was not alone. What the crew of the Dandelion Seed did not know was that they were being watched. Ambassador Trellick had sent observation drones to the moon of Keth 4, expecting to record the destruction of the human ship. Instead, his drones captured something that no one in the galaxy could believe. A human child kissing the deadliest dragon in existence. The footage spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species, every world, every space station saw the images. They saw little Bora walking up to Vorthax without fear. They saw her tiny hands touching his scales. They saw her lips pressing against his enormous snout. And they saw the dragon respond not with fire and death, but with gentle acceptance. "What are humans?" asked the High Counselor in the Valorian Assembly, staring at the footage for the 10th time. "They are pack-bonding predators," answered his science advisor. "They form emotional connections with almost anything. Their ancestors kept dangerous animals as pets and friends. But this She pointed at the screen. This should not be possible. That creature has killed millions. And yet a child. The child sees no monster, Trellick said slowly, understanding dawning in his mind. She sees only a creature that needs love. And somehow the dragon sees the same thing in her. Across the galaxy, people watched the footage again and again. They watched a 7-year-old human do the impossible. And they began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they had been wrong about a lot of things. The first night on Keth 4 was the longest night any of them had ever experienced. Nobody slept. Nobody could sleep. Through the viewport, they could see Vorthax moving slowly around their crashed ship, his massive body casting shadows across the rocky ground. Captain Una organized the crew into watches. Someone always had to be looking at the dragon, ready to warn the others if it attacked. But the attack never came. Vorthax circled and watched, but he never moved closer. Why does he not destroy us? Dohan asked quietly, standing next to Una at the viewport. Every story says he kills immediately. Ships do not last minutes in his territory. We have been here for hours. Una shook her head slowly. I do not know. Maybe he is curious. Maybe he is waiting for something. Maybe our ship is too small to bother with. Or maybe, Dohan said grimly, he is deciding the best way to cook us. By morning, or what passed for morning on this dark moon, the crew had begun to work. There was no point in sitting and waiting to die. Humans were not built for giving up. Engineer Jisoo spent every moment with the engines, her hands covered in grease and her eyes red from no sleep. She pulled apart pieces and put them back together. She rerouted power from systems they did not need. She tried everything she could think of. It is bad, she reported to the captain. The main engine core is cracked. I cannot fix it with what we have. We need parts that do not exist on this ship. Can't we send a distress signal? Already sending. But Captain, we are deep in the Forbidden Zone. No ship will come here. They are too afraid. Una nodded. She had expected this answer. Keep working. Find solutions. That is what we do. Medic Sunho set up a small medical area and treated the minor injuries from the crash. Cuts, bruises, one sprained ankle. Nothing serious. He was grateful for that at least. Biologist Taiwan kept the children calm by giving them jobs. Haru and Nari helped organize the emergency food supplies, counting packages and making lists. It kept their minds busy and their eyes away from the viewport. But Thora was different. The 7-year-old girl spent most of her time near the viewport, watching the dragon. Her mother kept pulling her away, but she always came back. There was something in her eyes that was not fear. It was something else, something the adults could not understand. He is beautiful, Bora said on the second day. Her mother nearly choked. Beautiful? Thora, that creature has killed thousands, maybe millions. He is a monster. He does not look like a monster. He looks sad. Una did not know what to say to that. She simply held her daughter close and wished they were anywhere else in the galaxy. On the third day, something changed. Vorthax stopped circling the ship. Instead, he lay down about 100 meters away, his enormous body curling like a cat resting in sunlight. His eyes remained open, still watching, but there was something different about the way he looked at them now. What is he doing? Taiwan asked, studying the dragon through his scientific instruments. His body temperature has stabilized. His breathing is slower. These are signs of relaxation in many species. You think he is relaxing? Dawn asked in disbelief. I think he has decided we are not a threat. At least not right now. That night, the temperature inside the ship dropped. The heating systems were damaged in the crash, and Jisoo could not spare power to fix them. The crew wrapped themselves in emergency blankets and huddled together for warmth. Bora pressed her hand against the viewport. The glass was very cold. Outside, she could see Vortex shifting his position. And then something strange happened. The dragon moved closer to the ship. Not in an attacking way, but slowly, carefully. He curled his massive body around the crashed vessel, like a wall of living starlight. "What is he doing?" Yuna whispered, pulling Bora back, but she got her answer moments later. The temperature inside the ship began to rise. Warmth spread through the broken corridors. The dragon's body was generating heat, and he had wrapped himself around them to share it. "He's keeping us warm," Bora said, smiling. "I told you he was nice." Nobody knew what to say. This was not how monsters behaved. This was not what killers did. Everything they knew about Vortex said he should have burned them to ash the moment they landed. Instead, he was protecting them from the cold. The fourth day brought a new discovery. Jiju found that she needed a specific mineral to repair one of the secondary engines. It was rare, but her scanners showed deposits of it deep underground, far from the ship. "I cannot get to it," she said in frustration. "It is too far, and we cannot survive outside for that long. Our environment suits only have 4 hours of air." That afternoon, Vortex rose from his position around the ship. The crew watched nervously as he walked away, his footsteps shaking the ground. He disappeared behind a ridge, and for a moment, they thought he had finally left them, but he came back in his massive jaws. Carried as gently as a mother cat carries her babies were chunks of glittering mineral. The exact mineral Jisoo needed. He dropped them near the ship's airlock, then returned to his position curled around them. Jisoo stared at the minerals through the viewport. Her hands were shaking. "That is impossible." How did he know? How could he possibly know? "He has been watching us," Taiwan said slowly. "He has been listening. He is intelligent. More intelligent than we ever imagined. He is helping us," Bora said simply. "Because we need help." The crew did not know how to react. 3,000 years of fear, of stories about the terrible dragon that killed everything it saw. And here was the truth. Vortex was not a mindless monster. He was something else entirely. Something that could choose to help instead of harm. That night, Bora lay in her small bed, wrapped in blankets. Her mother was asleep beside her, exhausted from days of stress. The ship was quiet and warm, protected by the dragon outside. Bora made a decision. She had watched Vortex for 4 days now. She had seen how he looked at them with those ancient, burning eyes. She had seen how he brought them gifts and kept them warm. She had heard the sounds he made, soft rumbles that reminded her of her grandmother's old cat purring. He was lonely. She was sure of it. 3,000 years alone on Miss Moon, with no one to talk to, no one to care about him. Everyone who came here was too afraid to see him clearly. Everyone ran away or attacked, and so he destroyed them. But Bora was not afraid. She slipped out of her bed quietly. She moved through the dark ship, past the sleeping crew members, past her Uncle Taiwan and her cousins, Haru and Nari. She found the airlock. And she remembered how her mother had shown her the emergency environment suits. The suit was too big for her, but she made it work. Her small fingers pressed the buttons to open the airlock, and the alarm began to sound. She stepped outside onto the surface of Keth 4. The ground was rocky under her feet. The stars above were brighter than she had ever seen them. And ahead of her, rising like a mountain of living light, was Vortex. The dragon's head turned toward her. His eyes, each one larger than her entire body, focused on the small human child walking toward him. Flames flickered between his teeth, and a low rumble came from deep in his chest. Bora kept walking. Behind her, she could hear screaming. Her mother's voice, filled with terror. Bora, come back!" But Bora did not stop. She walked across the rocky ground, her small boots leaving tiny footprints in the dust. She walked until she was standing right in front of the dragon's enormous snout, so close she could feel the heat of his breath. "Hello," she said, her voice tiny in the vast silence of the moon. "My name is Bora. Do you want to be friends?" The dragon stared at her. The flames between his teeth faded. The rumble in his chest changed, became softer, deeper. It was not a growl. It was something else entirely. Then Bora did something that no one in the galaxy had ever done. She reached up on her tiptoes, placed her small hands on the dragon's scales, and kissed him on the nose. The Galactic Council had made a rule 3,000 years ago. No ship could enter Sector 7 Omega. No person could visit. No probe could scan. The rule was simple, and every species in the galaxy followed it without question. They followed it because they were afraid in that sector, on a small moon called HFY, lived the last star dragon. His name was Vorthax, and he was older than most civilizations. His body was larger than a mountain. His scales shimmered like liquid starlight, changing colors as he moved. His eyes burned with ancient fire, and each one was bigger than a spacecraft. When he breathed, flames came out hot enough to melt anything. When he roared, the sound could be heard across planets. Vorthax had destroyed entire fleets. He had burned armies. He had made civilizations run away from this part of space. Nobody knew why he was so angry, or if he was angry at all. Nobody had ever survived long enough to ask. Ambassador Trellick stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Council station. He was a Valorian, a species with soft blue skin and many tentacles instead of arms. His tentacles were shaking as he watched his screens. Something bad was happening. A human ship had entered the Forbidden Zone. Trellick pressed buttons quickly and opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, you must turn back immediately. You are entering the domain of Vorthax." The response came after a moment. It was a woman's voice, calm and professional. "This is Captain Yuna of the transport ship Dandelion Seed. We have experienced engine failure. We cannot turn back. We are requesting permission to make an emergency landing on the moon of HFY." Trellick felt his heart beating fast. Valorians had 3 hearts, and all of them were pounding now. "You do not understand, human. HFY is where Vorthax makes his nest. No ship has ever survived within 1,000 kilometers of that moon. The dragon sees all vessels as enemies. He will destroy you." There was a long silence from the human ship. Trellick could hear voices talking in the background, but he could not understand what they were saying. Then the woman spoke again. "We have no choice. Our engines are dead. We cannot change direction. We are going down." Trellick closed his eyes. On his screen, he could see the information about the ship. It was a small transport vessel carrying 12 humans. Some of them were scientists. Some were crew members. And 3 of them were children. He began writing a message to Earth. It would be an obituary, a notice of death. It was the only thing he could do for them now. On the Dandelion Seed, Captain Yuna gripped her control chair tightly. Red lights flashed everywhere. Warning sounds filled the bridge. The ship was shaking badly as it fell toward the moon below. "Jisoo, what is our situation?" Yuna called out to her engineer. Jisoo was a young woman with quick hands and a sharp mind. She was pressing buttons and checking screens as fast as she could. "Engines completely dead, Captain. Main power at 40% and falling. I cannot restart anything. We are going to crash. Can you slow us down? I can try to use the emergency thrusters. It will not stop us, but it might make the landing survivable." Yuna nodded. "Do it." She felt a small hand grab her arm. Her daughter Bora was sitting in the seat next to her, strapped in tightly. The 7-year-old girl had big eyes and dark hair, that was tied in two small ponytails. She looked scared, but she was not crying. "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" Yuna pulled her daughter close and held her tight. "Yes, baby. Mommy will keep you safe. I promise." In the back of the ship, First Officer Dohan was making sure everyone was secure. He was a tall man with a serious face, but his voice was gentle as he spoke to the passengers. "Everyone hold on to something. Brace for impact." Biologist Taiwan held his twin children close to his chest. Haru and Nari were 10 years old, a boy and a girl who looked exactly alike. They were crying softly, and Taiwan whispered comfort to them. "Close your eyes. Hold on to me. It will be over soon." Medic Sunho checked his medical supplies one more time. He knew there would be injuries. He hoped they would not be too serious. The ship hit the surface of Keth 4 hard. The sound was terrible, like 1,000 thunderstorms at once. Metal bent and broke. Sparks flew across every room. People screamed as they were thrown against their restraints. Then everything went quiet. For a long moment, nobody moved. Dust floated in the air. The emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a dim red glow. "Report," Yuna said, her voice rough. Her head was bleeding a little, but she ignored it. "Is everyone alive?" One by one, voices called out. Don was okay. Jisoo was okay. Taiwan and the twins were frightened but unhurt. Sunho was already moving to check on everyone. "We survived," Doan said, looking at the captain with disbelief. "Somehow, we survived." Jisoo ran more checks on her damaged screens. Hull integrity at 60%. Life support is working. "But Captain," she looked up and her face was pale. "The engines are completely destroyed. We are not leaving this moon. Not without help." Yuna felt her heart sink, but she kept her face calm. A captain had to be strong for her crew. "Then we survive until help comes. Everyone, start checking the damage. Find out what we have and what we need." The crew began to move, grateful to have something to do. It kept them from thinking about where they were. It kept them from thinking about what lived on this moon. But little Bora had not moved from her mother's side. She was looking out through the viewport, her small face pressed against the cold glass. "Mommy," she said softly, "something is outside." Everyone stopped. Everyone turned to look. Through the viewport, they could see the surface of the moon. It was rocky and gray, covered in craters and strange formations. But something was moving out there. Something huge. At first, it looked like a mountain was shifting. Then they realized the truth. It was not a mountain. It was a creature. Vorthax rose from behind a ridge, his enormous body blocking out the stars. His scales caught the light and shimmered with 1,000 colors. His wings, folded against his sides, were large enough to cover cities. His head turned slowly, and his burning eyes found the crashed ship. A low sound came from the dragon. It was not quite a growl, not quite a roar. It was deeper than anything they had ever heard, felt more than heard, vibrating through the broken ship and into their bones. Yuna grabbed her daughter and pulled her away from the viewport. "Everyone get back. Stay quiet. Stay still." The crew pressed against the far wall, holding their breath. The children buried their faces against their parents. Nobody made a sound. Outside, Vorthax continued to watch them. His ancient eyes showed no emotion that humans could read. He did not attack. He did not leave. He simply watched. And the humans, trapped on his moon with no way to escape, could do nothing but wait.